Salutations, my fellow dudes and dudettes. I am your host, Sonic007, and welcome to our newest Let's Play of Kirby's Adventure. Yo, boy! The sequel in the Kirby franchise, and one I consider much better than the predecessor, which was just very short, very easy, very underwhelming as a platformer. However, this game has a heck of a lot more going for it. For one, it's going to be a lot longer than our previous playthrough. Kirby's Dreamland was 2 parts. This is going to be 7. Because as opposed to just going from one level to the next until we get to the end of level 5, which is only a boss rush, with this game we actually have like worlds and levels within those worlds, tiers if you want to call them that. But let's go over the basics. Kirby's got his usual shtick from the first game. He can hover infinitely. He could jump. He could blow gusts of wind at enemies. He could inhale them and spit them back out at other enemies as projectiles. And that's about all there is to it when it comes to basics. However, Kirby's Adventure introduced 3 things. For one, Kirby actually has a dash feature, so you can actually run in this game, so that's really cool. He also has the ability to do this little sliding kick. It's not all too useful, but it can help you get through some gaps with some blocks. So, it's okay, I guess. But the biggest thing that Kirby's Adventure introduces is Kirby's main attraction, the ability to copy abilities. Before we get into that, let's go over this little minigame. Throughout each of the tiers, except I believe the last one, there's going to be all these minigames plastered everywhere. With this one, it's pretty simple. Use this crane, you try to go for it, grab extra lives. The small Kirby plushes will get you 1 life, the large ones will get you 2. I usually don't recommend going for the big ones if they're like on the other side of the crane machine, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to drop it and you're going to waste a credit. You only have 2 tries. So I always recommend to only really go for the small ones. However, if the big one does like land nearby nearby the crane chute, I'd say go for it. It'll be well worth it. So yeah, that's a thing. Apparently there's a whole bunch of minigames plastered throughout this game's worlds. But anyways, Kirby's copy ability. Now in the first game, the only purpose for inhaling enemies was to use them as a projectile to shoot at other enemies. However, in this game, inhaling certain enemies and pressing down will actually allow you to digest that enemy as well as its power. And in this case, we currently have Cutter. Cutter is a little blade. Cutter is a blade you can throw. You can also change its trajectory by holding up on the D-pad, I believe. We also got a little mini boss fight here. You want to be careful with this guy because his large leaps can throw you off, especially considering you might not be able to tell where he's going to land. And hailing him, we'll get Crash Kirby. Crash Kirby is a screen nuke, as you can see. I'll be doing my best to explain all the abilities as we go through. I can't really say necessarily. Oh, by the way, this is Fire Kirby. You can use a little flamethrower. It's pretty simple. It's good for as a ranged attack, I find. But yeah, I'm gonna see if I can cover as many abilities in this game as I can. Apparently there are 24 copy abilities in all. I don't see myself being able to get all of them, but I'm gonna do my darnest to try. More importantly, I'm going to do my best to try and explain all of them as we go along this adventure. No pun intended. And just like the first Kirby game, we have little power-ups. I didn't mention this in Kirby's Dreamland game. it was really short, so I guess it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. That was Spark. Basically, you shoot out a bunch of electric sparks around you. It's great for coverage. Like it's great for crowd control. Like you're surrounded by some enemies, you could just use Spark Kirby, and boom, problem solved. There's also Sword Kirby, which you can actually, which, as we'll find out later in the game, is one of the only power-ups you can actually use in water. You could do a simple slash attack, or you could jump in the air and do this little spinning slash, which is pretty useful. Now that mini game, we're just in. Whenever you get to the end of a stage, you're gonna be immediately thrown onto this little trampoline. If you time your button press, if you time the jump button correctly, you can actually launch yourself really high. The higher you launch yourself, the better score bonus you get. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, just like the first game, score doesn't do anything. So it's simply bragging rights. However, if you manage to get yourself to the top, you earn yourself an extra life. Just get this out of the way, I'm not very good at that trampoline game. I managed to get a few extra lives further into our adventure, but as how things stand now, I can't really, I can't do it well. But back to those power-ups I mentioned. In the first game, we had power-ups that allowed Kirby to shoot out a bunch of fireballs, or just instant gusts of wind, what have you. And the game also had healing items in the form of energy drinks and Maxim tomatoes. Energy drinks heal you for two bars, and the Maxim tomato heals you for all. So, just had to get that out of the way. The museum. You come in here, you can get yourself a free power-up. Pretty simple. And now we got stage 4. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. For the first couple of worlds, you're only gonna, or at least for the first world, you're only gonna really do a set of 4 stages. The further you get into the game, the more stages you have to do. It never goes higher than 6 though, and as well as a boss fight. Ice Kirby though, not only can he freeze enemies, you can also use those frozen ice blocks that you create to knock out certain enemies. Well, just enemies in general. Why did I say certain? We'll be seeing what that guy. Oh yeah, that's a little annoying. If you can press select to actually release the power, like if you want to try out another one or whatever. Just be careful, because the other thing you need to take into account is whenever you take damage when you have a power-up, you'll immediately lose that power-up, and you're gonna have to inhale the little star in order to gain your ability back. Here we got a little piece of, here we got a lollipop, I believe, and it makes you temporarily invincible. And usually when you do this, you want to just make a mad dash. Also, for some reason, the frames drop pretty badly here. And that's one of the big problems with Kirby's Adventure. For one thing, it looks absolutely fantastic. For the NES, actually, it came out on, as opposed to the first game, which was on the Game Boy. The interesting thing is, I guess, despite the fact it was released late into the system, I guess the system itself couldn't handle everything, so the game sort of chugs at a lot of points. I don't get it. But anyway, here we have Wispy Woods. I didn't really explain him in the first game, but there was a really good reason. All he does is drop apples from the top of the screen, and he shoots 2 little balls of wind. And if you can't beat Wispy Woods, you're probably not playing platformers. I'm just saying. yeah, that was about it. That was all there was to it for World 4. I uh just a heads up, the next parts will be significantly longer because, like I said, um, further worlds mean more levels. All right, I've ranted about that enough, anyways. Next time on Kirby's Adventure, we're going to be exploring the next world. As for what that is, I'll leave that to your imagination. So until then, I got a juice.